Hello, we welcome you to this Bible study of the Banking Blessings Ministry. My name is Goodluck Ofegu, and this is my wife.
I'll be Ofegu. Welcome you.
We welcome you to our continuing study on the King and the People series, looking specifically at the life of David during the period that he was waiting to be made king of Israel, from the time he was anointed until the time he became king. We're looking at this because it tells us something about, we're trying to learn how David conducted himself as he was waiting for fulfillment of God's promise in his life. He was waiting for God's intervention. In the last Bible study, we saw that David's career in Saul's army terminated abruptly. David and Jonathan did some investigation that confirmed to them that Saul was ready to kill David anytime he got the opportunity. So after that, David departed. He accepted the end of that path, the end of that career, and now he needs to do something. He's looking for what to do. So we look at the short period following that, his exit from Saul's army, and we'll see some of the things he did to try to get himself back on the road, to try to get himself to move on, to still continue his preparation to become king of Israel. Honey, you have something to say before we launch into this study?
Well, just to welcome our listeners once again, and those our followers, and to say that once again, I'm sure we're in for a good time, spending a good time with the Word of God. So I'm keen to see what we're going to learn from it.
Well, what we are going to learn, as we said, from a human viewpoint, one would say that David's career in Saul's army ended prematurely. Of course, with hindsight, we now know he didn't, that it accomplished what God wanted him to accomplish. And at that time, he didn't know. So, in human eyes, it ended, as far as he was concerned, the service ended prior to when he thought it would end. It didn't end the way he wanted, but now it's time to move on. He needs to find what we call another path to kingship. He needs to find the next things to do, the next steps to take to get himself back on the road to becoming the king of Israel. He identified his immediate needs and his long-term needs, and he immediately started doing things to attend to these needs. And what we find is that David in this interacted with people normally. That is, he interacted with what we call human realities. And there is an important point here that when you are that waiting for God or waiting for God's time does not mean sitting and just waiting for a miracle to occur. That there are things that God expects you to do, and you try to do them. There are things he has placed in your path, events that you encounter. There are people that he has placed in your path that you interact with, and it is through your interaction with human realities that he actually works with you. And David illustrates this because we can see a series of things he did where things and a person would do. He didn't. I'm sure he prayed during this period, but his prayer wasn't highlighted in the Bible until later on when he went into his first battle. So it was what we are learning mostly from this is his human interaction, his interaction with human realities in order to get himself in position to receive God's intervention. Well, we'll see that he identified his short-term and long-term needs, and his needs were protection from Saul and a way to sustain himself economically, because remember he was working, he was in the army working, also playing music for Saul, but for some time he was also, prior to that, he was a shepherd until Saul told him, well, stop being a shepherd, just work for me. But whatever he was doing provided him livelihood. Now he had nothing. He had nothing to do. So he has to find a way to continue to keep himself economically viable, to provide for his livelihood. And we'll see how he did that. Also, he sought protection for his family because of the viciousness of Saul. It's quite possible that Saul would go and grab his parents and maybe hold them hostage or something. But when he had the opportunity, his parents met with him and he found them a place to stay. Of course, a number of people joined him that became his followers, and they also became his responsibility. His followers helped him, we will see. His followers helped protect him, but he also protected them. So there was a kind of symbiosis going on between them. And he needed to continue to build his leadership reputation in Israel. Even though he was no longer in Saul's army, he needed to be able, he set up an army, in fact, for himself. And one of the things his army did was, when any area of Israel needed help, was attacked by enemies, he will go and do what he can to beat the enemy back. And we'll see one example of that. These are the various things he did to try to get himself back on a path to becoming the king of Israel. Our study will come from 1 Samuel chapters 21, 22, and 23. We are going to select verses to read. We will not read the whole thing. Well, the first thing he did was, once he and Jonathan departed, the next port of call was the priests of Nob, Ahimelech. He visited with Ahimelech and requested food, just a short-term supply of food. He requested 5 loaves of bread. Eventually he got bread, not the way that he expected, but he got some bread. Then he inquired whether there was any weapon there, and it happened that there was. He was given to him. But really, one of the things we find in his interaction with Ahimelech was that it looked like he sought to shield Ahimelech from the dispute between him and Saul. He didn't want Ahimelech to know about the dispute. And one of the things we are going to see there is that David actually did not tell the truth to Ahimelech. And we will examine this a little bit. It's quite a complicated fact. We probably won't draw any conclusion based on it. But we will notice that in the 2 stops he made, first with Ahimelech, he told him, gave him information that wasn't exactly true. And then when he went to Gath, wanted to seek refuge with the king of Gath, and then suddenly realized, no, that was the wrong place to go. He pretended to be insane, which again was not telling the truth about himself. So there is something about this, and you have to understand, when the Bible highlights something, there is something they want us to learn from that, and we We probably won't learn it tonight, but we'll at least point it out so that we can think about it. Let us start with our reading. 1 Samuel chapter 21, verses 1 to 3, verse 6, and verses 8 to 9. This is David's interaction with Ahimelech, the priest of Nob.
1 Samuel chapter 21, reading from the NIV. Verse 1. David went to Nob, to Ahimelech the priest. Ahimelech trembled when he met him, and asked, "Why are you alone? Why is no one with you?" David answered Ahimelech the priest, "The king sent me on a mission and said to me, 'No one is to know anything about the mission I am sending you on. As for my men, I have told them to meet me at a certain place. Now then, what do you have on hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread, and whatever you can find." Verse 4. But the priest answered David, "I don't have any ordinary bread on hand. However, there is some consecrated bread here, provided the men have kept themselves from women." Verse 6. So the priest gave him the consecrated bread, since there was no bread there except the bread of the presence that had been removed from before the Lord and replaced by hot bread on the day it was taken. David asked Ahimelech, "Don't you have a spear or a sword here?" "I haven't brought my sword or any other weapon, because the king's mission was urgent." The priest replied, "The sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom you killed in the valley of Elah, is here. It is wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If you want it, take it. There is no sword here but that one." David said, "There is none like it. Give it to me."
Well, let's just talk about this a little bit. As we can see, David did not tell the truth to Ahimelech, but you could also see what he told Ahimelech, that there was no selfish purpose. He wasn't trying to accomplish any he wasn't telling him untruth in order to accomplish a selfish purpose. And also he wasn't trying to cover up any wrongdoing. It's not as if he did something to Ahimelech and he was lying about it. No, there was no wrongdoing to cover up. But it appears, and the Bible doesn't tell us this, but we have to try to understand, it appears that David was trying to protect Ahimelech from information that was potentially harmful to him. In fact, we know, we've discussed this in the past, because when Saul found out about this meeting, Ahimelech defended himself. Saul accused him of conspiring with David. And Ahimelech's defense relied so much on the fact that he interacted normally with David. He didn't know about any of the things Saul was talking about. He said, "Look, I interacted with David the same way that I would interact with any of the people that are under my spiritual leadership." But he didn't use those words. But essentially he said he did what a priest would do. And there isn't any, he prayed for David, gave him some food, and there isn't any reason. Also, he knew David to be working for Saul, so there was nothing unusual about giving him a sword, since he didn't have one. Of course, Saul killed him and the other priests anyway. So the value of this interaction, the fact that David protected him from knowledge of the dispute with Saul, is that Ahimelech didn't have to lie in order to defend himself against Saul. And whatever Saul did to him was totally on Saul's head. There was nobody had a share of it. Ahimelech told him the truth, but Saul, of course, would not believe him. So, is that telling us that there could be a good purpose for being untruthful? We don't know. And we don't need to draw that conclusion. This is something we need to understand. Let's just move on to David's next stop. Or honey, you want to say something? Or at the end?
Yeah, we come across this kind of situation in the Bible oftentimes. Remember the case of Abraham and Sarah, when he had to say that Sarah is his sister in order to avoid, to protect himself, because he felt that the king was going to kill him because Sarah was such a beautiful woman.
Yeah.
That if the king knew that Sarah is his wife, the king would kill him and take Sarah.
Yeah.
So he had to do that lie, and God fought for him when the king wanted to lie with Sarah. He said, "If you do it, you're a dead man.
Yeah.
This is this man's wife." So God fought for him. So sometimes I don't really know. No, I'm not. That's not trying to buttress the fact that to lie is good. Lying is against what the command. What God is a sin.
Yeah.
You know, the Bible says, "Let your ears be yes and let your no be no." So lying is something that is not good. But we have to see in the context of the Bible when men who are under God's mission have to, say something that is not absolutely correct or accurate in order to protect themselves. Yeah. It also came in the time of Rahab. Rahab the harlot, when she protected the spies, and when they came as the men and women of Jericho, they came and said that, "Where are those spies?" He said, "I didn't say that. Maybe we should check elsewhere." Meanwhile, she was hiding them. And as soon as those people left, she let them down and told them how to escape. These were all things in God's purpose. But that's not, we have to see them in the context, see what David did in the context of his mission. And not to say that you should lie for God or, So it's a very delicate thing, but I thought we needed to point that out.
Okay, so his next stop, once he left Nob, was he went westwards to the Philistine territory, and it wasn't said that maybe he intended to seek refuge in the park with Achish, the king of Gath. However, when he reached there, the servants immediately recognized him and started asking, "Isn't this David, the one that killed Goliath, the one for whom they made up these wonderful songs?" So immediately David changed his mind about going there and felt that maybe he wouldn't be safe and that he might be a prize catch for them. So he pretended to be insane. The Bible said he let saliva run down his cheek and he was making marks on the wall. And he was successful in pretending to be insane because they drove him away from the palace. The king ordered that he should be thrown out of the palace. Let us read from 1 Samuel 21 verses 10 to 15.
1 Samuel chapter 21 verse 10. That day David fled from Saul and went to Achish, king of Gath. But the servants of Achish said to him, "Isn't this David, the king of the land? Isn't he the one they sing about in their dances? Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands." David took these words to heart and was very much afraid of Achish, king of Gath. So he pretended to be insane in their presence, and while he was in their hands, he acted like a madman, making marks on the doors of the gate and letting saliva run down his beard. Achish said to his servants, "Look at the man, he is insane. Why bring him to me? Am I so short of madmen that you have to bring this fellow here to carry on like this in front of me? Must this man come into my house?"
Well, so we'll see there David pretended to be what he wasn't in order to get out without revealing himself. So let's just leave it there. It's similar to giving incorrect information to Ahimelech. This one he gave incorrect information about himself through his actions in order to protect himself. Well, once they drove him out of the palace, he went back into Judah, he went back into Israel, and went to a cave, the cave of Adullam, close to the valley of Elah, where he killed Goliath. Now, he stayed there long enough to pick up a team. A number of things happened there. His brothers and father's household joined him. The Bible said when they found out he was there, they went. I think David at this time was, he was in hiding, but he probably found a way to send a message to some people, maybe to his family, and maybe to a few people he knew. But there was a very good response. His family joined him, 400 followers joined him, and they formed the nucleus, the beginning of his army. And we can see here that all the positive reputation he built up when he was in Saul's army was not a waste, because these people have come to join him because they believe he could protect them. They said many of them were people that were mistreated. I felt mistreated by Saul, people that were fed up with him. Saul's government turned out not to be very positive after some time. So a lot of people were dissatisfied, and once these people found out that David was on the run, they decided that their best bet is to join him and have him, live under him as their leader. And that's what happened. So let us read 1 Samuel 22 verses 1 to 2, those two verses.
1 Samuel chapter 22 verse 1. David left Gath and escaped to the cave of Adullam. When his brothers and his father's household heard about it, they went down to him there. All those who were in distress or in debt or discontented gathered around him, and he became their commander. About 400 men were with him.
Then from there, to illustrate that he was concerned about his parents, once they joined him, he realized he was going to be fighting battles, he was going to be moving quickly from place to place, and he didn't think his parents could sustain all that. So he decided to go and keep them with the king of Moab. Now this is on the east side of Israel. So he went to Moab, and it is here for the first time that we see that yes, he was interacting with people, he was interacting with what I call human realities, but he was always prayerful. He was really, he knew he was expecting something from God. He knew that something was going to happen at God's time. So when he came to the king of Moab to request refuge for his parents, for the first time he said that he acknowledged that he was, who read this in the Bible, he acknowledged for the first time, acknowledged to people's hearing that he was searching for what God will do for him, what God will do for me. He said, can you keep my parents here with you until I find what God will do for me? So that is an evidence that while he was doing human things all through, he was prayerful. He was thinking about God. He was thinking, he was conscious of his relationship with God and God's promise to him. Then once he found his parents a refuge at the palace of the king of Moab, he decided to go into a stronghold in Moabite territory. He wanted to stay there. But a prophet came to him and said, no, your place is in Israel, so you need to go back to Judah. Don't stay in Moab. Moab is on the eastern part of Israel. So he got the message and immediately went back to Judah and went to the forest of Herod. That he went to the wilderness. And it was in this forest that Abiathar, the only surviving son of Ahimelech, or grandson actually. But the 85 priests were killed in Nob by Saul, so the only person that survived of the priestly family was Abiathar, and he joined David at this point. Let's go to the Bible, 1 Samuel chapter 22, verses 3 to 5 and 20 to 23.
1 Samuel 22, verse 3. From there, David went to Mizpah in Moab and said to the king of Moab, "Would you let my father and mother come and stay with you until I learn what God will do for me?" So he left them with the king of Moab, and they stayed with him as long as David was in the stronghold. But the prophet Gad said to David, "Do not stay in the stronghold. Go into the land of Judah." So David left and went to the forest of Herod.
So we are jumping ahead here. So I made this comment that this was after Saul had destroyed Nob. Then the rest thing we are going to read came after that.
Verse 20 of 1 Samuel 22. But one son of Ahimelech, son of Ahitub, named Abiathar, escaped and fled to join David. He told David that Saul had killed the priest of the Lord. Then David said to Abiathar, "That day when Doeg the Edomite was there, I knew he would be sure to tell Saul, 'I am responsible for the death of your whole family. Stay with me, don't be afraid. The man who wants to kill you is trying to kill me too. You will be safe with me.'"
Yes, and in this you will see the relationship that existed between him and his followers. That he offered them protection, but he needed them to help protect him. They formed an army. He formed an army with them, and that army helped him as he moved from place to place. He wasn't going to fight Saul. We'll discuss this in the future, but he was ready if anything, if he needed to fight. Of course, he needed them for protection as well. So we call this we see two important principles as David was running around trying to get himself back on his feet. Is that he interacted with human realities as he sought to get himself in position to receive what God will do for me, to receive God's intervention. When you are waiting for God's time, God works with you as you interact with human realities. It's not a matter of just go and sit and pray. Of course, prayer is very important, but that's not the only thing you do. Unless your mission is to pray, then you just pray. But if your mission involves dealing with people, then God wants you to make progress towards your mission. And the way you make progress is by doing the things that He places on your path. Then the second principle is that the people around David protected the people around him so that they could help protect him.
Yeah, I think these are two very good points to make at this point. Because oftentimes we see that when people are answering the call of God, as human beings, we will have our human realities. We have people that depend on us, be they our children, be they our aged parents, be they our relations. We don't. Those are things that God has also placed along our path, and we have to take on those responsibilities as well.
Yeah.
David did not abandon his parents.
Yeah.
While focusing on what God will do for him.
Yeah.
He needed to provide for them. And because it's in the will of God, he asked, because the king of Moab could have refused.
Yeah. Oh yes.
So, but he asked and he received.
Yeah.
And his parents were settled there and his mind was okay.
Yeah.
Now, the next thing is that God provided for him the men with which he could feel that protection.
Yeah.
But more so, as I look at it, the fact that he was able to remember, these are renegades, these are people in debt, these are people that are outlaws like David. So you can imagine that controlling them and leading them will not be easy.
No.
But God displayed the ability, David's leadership ability here.
Yeah.
That he's able to put those people together.
Yeah.
And they actually form the core of his army.
Yes.
And from here, as we'll see, later, you will see David's mighty men rose from this core.
Yeah.
So you will see that there's something extraordinary about is displaying the leadership ability that God has seen in David.
Yeah.
That he's a man of war and he has good leadership qualities that can lead the people of Israel.
Yeah.
So those two principles came out very, very well at this, here at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Let's proceed. David, as we said, he put together an army, and the purpose of the army was, of course, to protect himself from Saul, to protect his followers. We see that in his exchange with Abiathar. The man that is wanting to kill you is also seeking my life. So, to protect his followers, and then to provide for himself and his followers. This is not very clear now, but later on in his during this period, you will see how he used his. They used the fact that he had these followers helped him provide for himself and provide for them. And of course, he is the leader of Israel. So he's not yet leader of Israel, but he wants to grow to leadership of Israel, and he wants to show that he could lead Israel. So one of his objectives also was to protect Israel against enemies, and we will see an example of that. That's the last reading I think we're going to have. 1 Samuel 23 verse 1 to 6, when he protected the city of Keilah. Let's read that in the Bible.
1 Samuel chapter 23 verse 1. When David was told, look, the Philistines are fighting against Keilah and looting the threshing floors, he inquired of the Lord, saying, shall I go and attack these Philistines? The Lord answered him, go, attack the Philistines and save Keilah. But David's men said to him, here in Judah we are afraid. How much more then if we go to Keilah against the Philistine forces? Once again David inquired of the Lord, and the Lord answered him, go down to Keilah, for I am going to give the Philistines into your hand. So David and his men went to Keilah, fought the Philistines, and carried off their livestock. He inflicted heavy losses on the Philistines and saved the people of Keilah. Now Abiathar, son of Ahimelech, had brought the effort down with him when he fled to David at Keilah.
Yeah. Well, that is really the thing. There are two things there. David interacted with human realities as he tried to get himself in position to receive what God will have for him. He his immediate, he did things to provide for both his short-term and long-term needs, but his needs, as we listed, were protecting himself and his followers from Saul, providing for himself and his followers. You saw when they defeated the Philistines in Keilah, they carried off their things. So that's one way they provided for themselves, by taking spoils from battle. And of course protected Israel against enemies. That battle against the Philistines in Keilah was an illustration of that. So that's really the end of the study. There's something more you want to say?
It's actually to show, today that David had human needs like we all do, while still walking in the purpose or waiting for the manifestation of God's call on his life to be the king of Israel. He still had human needs. He knew about that call. God was still giving him assignments, like we see in the battle to go and save Keilah. So he may have thought he was waiting, but God was preparing him. It was at this time that he was running from Saul that he was able to form the core of his army. So at this time he felt he was running, he was able to, put in place other tactics that would come in handy at some point to save him, which is that of disguise, or to deceive the enemy, which he had to do at some point, when people were after his life. But having said that, we still have to note that lying is never condoned. It's a sin against God. So let's not say that after David lied at this point. These were things that were done at the time of war, So if you use tactics to deceive your enemy, he's trying to save your life. If every lie still has a consequence, and we can see that David's lying at that time, one could say, had a consequence that many priests were killed. But we have to look at those things in the context of what they were. It was a time of war, and David was trying to save his life. He did not lie, but he did not say what is accurate.
No,
he didn't say the correct situation, which is still not condoned. Lies can never be condoned under any circumstance, and that is why he is God. When people are walking his will, he knows what to do to get them out of whatever situation. I think that's what I have to put in at this time, that when we are waiting for God, we still have human needs. We don't have to neglect our families, we don't have to neglect our friends, we don't have to neglect their need, the people that God has placed for us to care for. All in the fact that we are trying to do the will of God, or trying to pursue the purpose of God. I think that's what I have to say to
I think that is really the lesson of this Bible study, because as David did these things, he was actually going through his preparation.
He was being prepared.
He was going through the preparation. So we could see there that God works with you as you go through those human interactions, as you interact with human realities, as you attend to the realities that he places in front of you. There isn't any other way. And of course, while you are attending to him, attending to those things, you remember that you are waiting for God, and you have to attend to them in a word that represents him in the situation. So I believe David did his best here to represent his mission, to represent himself as a child of God, and he attended to the problems that were in front of him, and as he attended to those problems, he was getting himself closer and closer to what God will have for him. We thank you for joining us in this Bible study. We remind you of our website where you can find all our Bible studies, all the ones we've done in the past and all the ones we'll do in the future. We pray that from this program that you learn something, you encounter an experience that will make a positive impact in your life and bring you closer to God's purpose for your life. Thank you, and God bless you.
God bless you till we meet again.